Okay, so this is a quick comic review. I just wanted to upload something for the 14th, and to have 3 straight days of videos, as it was... No, Thursday's video, right? I had a video on Thursday? Yeah, I did, because it was Thursday's video, and that was Friday. Hell, maybe Wednesday, right? No, say, recorded on Wednesday, but 4 straight days of videos. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I like to do that, too. But here we go with the reviews. Now, all these books I own. Some of these are mini, all but one of these comics are mini or maxi series. Now this first one, I do not have volume 1 because I have it in floppy form and I got it, the rest in digital, not digital, I got the rest in trade paperback format. And the reason for why that was, because I've had this series for a long ass time. So this was still when I was like not readily, but I was getting single issues, which yes, I did just stop that last year. February of last year, but I mean, like, I was more. I guess you could say. That was also like towards the beginning of it, but it was more like when I was like I'd pick up anything, and this was a series that I'm glad I picked up, and that is Family Tree by Jeff Lemire. Now this is one of those comics that doesn't have the most definitive. Oh, this is 1, 2, 1, 3. Does not have the most definitive of endings. It has a definitive ending, yes. It wasn't canceled prematurely or anything like that, but it doesn't have like the best of endings. I guess I should have said, but it's not a terrible ending. I would say that perhaps on a reread I would like a lot more. Like I would hate it as much, but I still think this is a pretty damn good book. Now I think I liked it a lot more the first time I started reading it. So I started reading it, and they didn't have issues 7 to 12 at my local comic shop. So I had to get the trades, and that was my birthday of my cousin actually gave it to me. His parents did, but same diff. And for a birthday 2022. So I've had it since then. I know. Almost 2 years later, and I finally get down to reading it. And this is one that one of the rules that I am trying to try and get myself to read the comics that are in my collection. I try to state to myself 1 or 2 things of buying comics nowadays, buying trades, is to try and get, like, if I get like a bunch of books, to try and get at least 1 or 2 that I've read before. Like I obviously don't own. Usually it's because my library had it and I just want to own it myself. You saw that with Snock, there were a bunch of them last month for December's. It was Snock Girl, it was Maestro's, Post Americana, it's a bunch of books. Blackbird by Sam Humphries, it's a crap ton of books. Man-Eaters, you get the point. And then the second rule is that I started something, let's try and finish it. You know, Family Tree, I read the first, I want to say 4 issues, the first volume. But I had the first 6 issues, so at least, at the most, the first 6 issues that I had read, and nothing beyond that. But I think I had stopped. I knew I wasn't able to get the rest of the series. I think I had stopped myself. It's like, you know what, I'm not going to be able to get it, so. And the third one is like with Damn Them All by Simon Spurrier, to finally read something like that by an author I'm not the biggest fan of. His writing or his his personality. I haven't heard too much about him, but his writing is too juvenile, in my opinion, at times. Damn Them All was the most grounded of all of his work, but a lot of it seems to be wannabe Rick Remender. They say wannabe Warren Ellis, but I say wannabe Rick Remender. But anyways, so that is why I'm reviewing these. And then the other rule is that there's 2 books by an author that 2 series by this author he's done for Image Comics, both of which I have, and I've read one of them, so it's like, why not read the other, you know? But anyways, Family Tree, if you like Jeff Lemire and you have not read this one, I would say, I would recommend this one. It is pretty damn good, but just don't expect anything, like, super groundbreaking. It's just, okay, it's not as good as his Royal City. That's probably, in my opinion, what I've read of his so far, his magnum opus. I finished it, at least. The other one would be Sweet Tooth. I only read the first volume of that. It's a bunch of them, obviously, but that's the only 2 I can think of off the top of my head. Roughneck was pretty damn good. I remember that being pretty good. But this one, it's a nice, like, little post-apocalyptic type comic. It does kind of go in strange ways. I mean, I'm sure if I really thought about it, I would think how strange it was that it goes from here to there in a matter of like a few issues. But I think that's maybe that was just like get to 12 issues, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It could have been a lot more convoluted. It didn't seem like it was. I didn't even feel like it was all that convoluted. It kind of the way that the story was told, it kind of it explains it well how it goes from point A to point Z in such and so few issues. But it goes from like mild spoilers, but this isn't really a big spoiler. It goes from a girl that's going has a tree growing out of her to a post-apocalyptic setting, which I guess you could argue that it's kind of like the same kind of thing. It naturally would lead to a post-apocalyptic kind of story. But I still like this one, and I'm so glad I finished it, and I'm so glad I own it too. So next one I've talked about before, I did just review this book, but I want to go into a more in-depth, sort of more in-depth review. And it is one I've read recently too, and that is Flawed, written by Chuck Brown, with artwork done by Prensy. And this time the artwork is done for Family Tree, is done by Phil Hester, and then the ink's done by Eric Gapster. It didn't say on the actual issue itself, it just listed their names, which is so annoying. So let's check to see here what it will say. It says art is done by Phil Hester, Eric Gapster, and Ryan Cody for Family Tree. But now moving back to Flawed, which is written by Chuck Brown, with artwork done by Prensy. No last name, no first name, it's just Prensy. This one I did really enjoy. This one I felt was pretty, like, whenever I hear a series is only 6 issues, even then, I'm kind of like, how the hell can I tell a whole entire story in 6 issues? There's a series called The Closet by James Tynion that's only 3 issues, and it had a terrible ending, so it just was like, oh, yeah, shit, we only 3 issues? Just end it. We gotta get it out, just end it. But this one did manage to have a definitive ending. From what I remember, I did manage to have a definitive ending, and it did have a really good story. The story is it's a serial killer that may or may not have some supernatural powers. It deals with it's a crime, occult, supernatural comic, and it blends all 3 genres exceptionally well. It is a very interesting comic too. Like I was never bored with this comic, like I was with On the Stump, which I haven't read for a long time. I want to say it was the beginning. Yeah, it was the beginning of last year. So it's been about a year since I've read On the Stump. When I read it, I remember it being kind of like not slow per se, but it's kind of like it wasn't all that I still liked it, but it was kind of like just okay kind of thing. But this one is exceptional. Not as good as his magnum opus, Bitter Root, but it's still worthy of being in the same class and still worthy of being, in that same genre, in that same field. Because again, it's Chuck Brown Image Comics, so naturally, you look up Chuck Brown Image Comics, you're gonna find this and Bitter Root. So I would say if you like Bitter Root, if you like that kind of like, if you liked what I was saying about it, then you won't be disappointed. But just don't expect it to be anything like super, super, super good. Like it's gonna be a very interesting story that is worthy of. Honestly, it's $15 too for 6 issues. That's a damn good price nowadays. Like this was the same price, and this was look at the difference. So this is 1 volume. And keep in mind, this came out before this did. Yeah, it's like difference is night and day. Then we have Shadecraft by Joe Henderson. This is the one I was talking about. That Skyward was the other series. He's only done 2. I think he's only written 2 comics too. Just this and Skyward. I don't think he's done anything else that I saw at least. But Skyward, it was definitely, again, like I said, his magnum. Like I keep saying for all these series, is that that's his magnum opus, and this is still good. I would still highly recommend this to fans of Skyward who like that kind of storytelling, who like the writing in Skyward. This does have like a lot of twists and turns, most of which I saw coming a mile away. It was almost insultingly so, but I don't think it was meant to be like a super cliffhanger, a super huge twist that no one saw coming. And I will give credit where credit is due. This comic is rated T for teen, and you could make the argument it is for teen. Well, it is targeted for teenagers, but it is T for teen, and it's very open ended. honestly, a lot of Image Comics is ratings are very open ended. Like there's Jeff Lemire's Family Tree was T plus. There's a lot of F words in that book, but they had to censor them in Snodgrass. I don't know if that was intentional or done as a joke or what have you, but they had to censor it. Now, yes, further down the line they would have the censor bar even later and later and later, to the point where you could actually see what the book was. It was like the smallest line. Like it was like someone had just a pen and just done that to it. But and there was another one I was trying to think of. What was the other one I was trying to think of? That was T plus, but they did censor the language and so it had to be censored. I don't remember, but that, and then Family Tree is all uncensored. Now, yeah, it wasn't as violent. There's no nudity. The only thing in it was a language that would make it R-rated or TVMA if you want to go that route. But Shadecraft was T13, and this one was very tame. Probably the most tame out of all these, because all these are M for mature or T plus. Flawed was M for mature. It's very violent, and there was a lot of swearing. Not like a whole lot, but I remember it being at least a few F words. But this one, no language. I don't think there's a single swear word in here at all. But is Lego Skyward is very good and pretty appropriate for all ages. I would say like 8 and up probably. Could read this just fine. It's a good introduction into horror comics too, but it doesn't dial it down for younger audiences either. It is still very and it wasn't like scary at all, but it was very atmospheric, and it definitely did not dial down anything for kids, which I do appreciate that. And again, it's T13, so I would say this is if I had to give a rating to it, it would be I would say 13 and up, because horror seems to be very the MPAA at the very least seems to be very stringent about it. It's just a little bit scary. It's automatically PG-13. In fact, the Conjuring series are all rated R just for these scares alone, which I think is a stupid thing. I think that they begged the MPAA to make it rated R for the scare. So it's oh, look at this movie, it's so scary, and it was like Insidious, you could argue, is scarier than Conjuring is, and that's PG-13, whereas Conjuring is R-rated. But this, I would still say is a PG, but not super scary, but kind of like a Happy Death Day, that kind of scary, where it's not super scary, but it is still a horror book. But this I did like. I thought it was very good, and the few twists that I did not see coming, I was very surprised with. And I do think it does do away with a lot of cliches that we would expect from this kind of storyline. It's so this girl she can control shadows, but at first no one can see them. And you think, oh, we're gonna do this thing where she's really freaked out, and everyone thinks she's weird, and they do kind of do that, but even that is done in a sort of clever way. Not in a clever way, but it's not done in an annoying way. And there's another time where oh great, they're gonna do it again, but they don't do that, thankfully. And I'm very happy they didn't do that. But it's still a very good book, and it's only 5 issues, so you can't go wrong picking this book up. And finally, we have Undiscovered Country Volume 1. The only series that is Family Tree technically, but the only series that has more than one volume to it. Yes, Family Tree has 3, but as I meant to say, the only series that is still ongoing. All the rest of these they're done with, either 1 volume or 3 in Family Tree's case. But Undiscovered Country already has 4 volumes in it. Now, this is a series that took me forever to get into at first. The first 4, I would say I read the first 4 issues the first time, didn't really get down to it. I didn't get past the first issue, I think. I think I had to push myself, to get past those 4 issues the first time I read those first 4 issues. The second time I read it, I liked it a tad bit more. I found a bit more to enjoy from it, but then every time after that, I found more and more to enjoy until this most recent time I read the first 6 issues, the first story arc, all this, first trade paperback, and I do really dig it. Now, I did a bit too much when I said really dig it. I just think it's more interesting than as it goes along, it's more and more interesting. And now this isn't a comic where, yes, I will get the next volume because I have a first 4 volumes, so I might as well get the fifth and sixth. It is only going to be six volumes, but it's not one where if they didn't have, like, if I had to wait for the sixth volume to come out, yeah, it'd be kind of annoying because that's the last volume, but let's say fifth. Fifth volume comes out, and let's say it's not going to be, but let's say it's just super popular and it's out of stock on Amazon for 2 months. I would not be nearly as pissed off as I was if it was as I would be if it was the next volume of Hell to Pay by Charles Soule. Same writer as this, actually. So this one is written by Charles Soule and Scott Snyder, but it seems to be more a Scott Snyder book than a Charles Soule book. If you know Scott Snyder's, especially his most recent method of writing comics, this is more Scott Snyder than Charles Soule. But Charles Soule is here to kind of pull it back a little bit. I do feel like this is a lot more easier to follow than something like Death Metal or his Justice League run. It's a lot like Charles Soule to kind of, I guess, tells him kind of like, hey, not everyone likes that kind of storytelling, and and then he's like, let's do this, let's do that, and Scott Snyder says, all right, let's do that, and then he writes the comic that way. I would not be surprised if that's actually how that happened. That's just me speculating, but would not be surprised to hear that was the actual way it went. Because Charles Soule seems to be a better writer overall than Scott Snyder is. Just saying a lot, but I'm saying over the years, because I've read his Curse Words, that's my favorite Charles Soule book. But I also read his Potato, which wasn't as good as his Curse Words, but as it went along, it got a little bit better and better, like with much like with Undiscovered Country. But even then, it was a lot better than Scott Snyder's recent work, which was his and I think it was back in 2015, by the way, for Poe Dameron. But I don't know why I said by the way. It had to be because it was sequel trilogy time. Around the time it was sequel trilogy. But in Scott Snyder, he has his he has Batman obviously is his best. I really dug his Witches, but then of course we had Batman, his Death Metal, which I keep saying Death Metal. What was Death Metal? No, Dark Knight's Metal. Dark Knight's Metal was what I read. I can't even tell the difference between two damn books. I remember putting it in for the most recent time I wanted to read it because my library had it. And then I put in Death Metal first, and I was surprised I couldn't find it. I was like, oh wait, that's why, because they had Dark Knight's Metal. I knew that for the most part. That's what they had. But this one's good enough. It's nothing that I was super excited to read, but I wasn't exactly dreading it either. Pretty middle of the road. So if I had to give all these books a rating, I would give. I'm not gonna include the ending for Family Tree, because I don't judge books based on their ending. I judge them as a whole. Now, if it has a super insulting ending, yeah, I would judge it based off its ending. But this wasn't super insulting at all. If anything, it was just rushed, I felt. Family Tree, I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. Flawed, I would give an 8.5 out of 10. Shadecraft, I would give an 8 out of 10. And Undiscovered Country, a 6 out of 10. All of these I do recommend, but if I had to recommend one to get right off the bat, I would say Flawed. Then so if I had to go in order, let's do this. This is the order I would go in. So first you have Flawed, then Shadecraft, then Family Tree, which Shadecraft and Family Tree are kind of tied. And then Undiscovered Country, even though it is only $10, I would say to save your money and get the other book instead. And honestly, just wait till they may even make a hardcover out of it, or a compendium once the series is over. Because the series, the most recent volume, Volume 5, which just hasn't come out yet, it's coming out this April, that does say it's the penultimate volume. I actually did look it up what that meant, and it does say that it's a second to last of the series. So it'll have 6 volumes total, and it'll be done. Which I believe that will be 30 issues? Doesn't sound right. Why does it not sound... No, it will not be, but 36 issues. That's right. It didn't sound right. Duh. 6 times 6 is 36. So at least 36 issues. There was a special, so 37. But that, as I say, is that.